Hey guys, I wanted to make this video because I was looking at my competitive stats for a couple heroes and I came across something really weird and after looking at this further and kind of figuring out in my head what they did, I realized that Blizzard's uh, I think we might have to take the average stats, especially average per 10, which is what I'm going to focus on here, with a big grain of salt. Um, for the people that have actually played Lucio and know and understand this, these are my competitive stats for this current season for Lucio. And I was looking at this, I came across 15.2 sound barriers provided, average per 10 minutes. And it's sort of an eye-popping stat because one, it's BS. It's not even possible. So it normally takes a lot more than a minute. And unless there's just a game where just constant drawn out team fights, in those kind of situations where you're constantly hitting your shots and you're getting heals off to people around you and you're kind of sticking with your team, it can be possible to get it charged up really quickly. But that's not always the case. Not most games aren't always like that. There's a lot of teams staggering their deaths that you're going to play against, and you usually won't be the person getting any damage on that one guy coming back alone getting killed or healing your teammates because they're full health. So there's a lot of moments in the game for Lucio, just depending on how the game goes and how coordinated your opponents are, where he just does not get charged that quickly. It's actually normal that he takes longer than a minute, is my point. Now, I was sitting here banging my head against the wall going, how in the world are they coming by this? And then I flipped over to compare other per 10-minute stats. And I had one game. This was easier for me to single out because I've only had one game so far on Reinhardt. Um, they don't show it here because of the way they do the time played instead of actual half game, full game. So I basically played him for 8 minutes on attack and we won the game. My my stats weren't that great. Well, they weren't horrible. I charged in a lot and died, but it did actually help my team push the point, so it was worth. But I noticed over here. This helps tell the story of what's going on in my Lucio stats. So this says eliminations average per 10 minutes, 12.4. Well, I didn't play 10 minutes. So that tells the story of what they're doing here. Basically, I had 10 eliminations and it was of an 8-minute span. So it's basically looking at that and saying, based on that rate, if I had 10 per 8, if it had gone another 2 minutes, it would have been 12.4. It's basically what they're saying. It's the rate, but that's actually not an accurate number. This average per 10 minutes is a guesstimation. Guesstimation's bad. I mean, that's an accurate rate, is what they're saying here. Like that would be the case if I had kept doing that, but I guess that's why I want to say it's a guesstimation. That's an assumption. That's not. These aren't real numbers. These aren't real stats. Like I didn't actually do this because it's assuming I'm going to go on that same rate that I did, 10 eliminations per 8 minutes. This same pace that I'm on is going to keep going. Same thing for Lucio. There's probably a lot of games where I played and I didn't actually make it to 10 minutes, and in some of those cases I probably got up a quick charge sound barrier once or twice in that game, and it was basically just two big team fights, and then the rest of the game, they just sort of flopped and we won really quickly. Because I did have a couple games like that. I also had a couple games where we lost quickly like that, and I may have gotten off one sound barrier, like one or two sound barriers in a few minutes. Because trust me, I haven't had the greatest win rate this season on Lucio. There have been some cases where I was like gold and silver and elims because yeah, DPS bad. So I think that they're arriving at this number the same way. They're assuming that if I'm always on that pace in each of those games, then they're giving me a higher average than I would normally have, and then they're accumulating that because they're adding it together and making an average based on all those games averages. So this is not accurate. This is not. I'm not actually doing this. It's actually literally impossible to get out 15 sound barriers in 10 minutes. I mean, it may not be impossible, but it's very rare. Like, that's a really high number of ultimates to get off in a 10-minute period. That's like mayhem mode numbers. That's not normal competitive numbers. So this is really deceiving. I don't like the way Blizzard does their averages. This is basically making assumptions on a pace you're on, not your actual stats. Um, what I would actually wish they would do, which makes a lot more sense, is to show your actual numbers. If I didn't make it to 10 minutes and I basically got 10 eliminations in 8 minutes, then just say 10 eliminations in 10 minutes and that's what I got and assume I don't get any more. Now, yes, it's also making an assumption, but that's a more realistic number. I actually did get 10 eliminations in less than a 10-minute span, so that's what it should be. This number should not be this high. This is a very generous algorithm that they're doing here, and it makes me wonder. Most averages are done per 10 minutes, um, except for hard numbers like, eliminations. That's obviously per match, but well, I'm assuming it is, but it just makes me wonder how many more stats are funky and aren't really accurate. Um, because yeah, again, 15 sound barriers in Lucio, I'd be like the greatest support Lucio of all time. Like that's really high. So I just thought that was really weird. Um, so yeah, don't trust any of these averages per 10 minutes because they're not accurate.